The story of the RMS Titanic is more than just the story of a ship. It is a story about people, dreams, and a time that has long since passed. When we think of the Titanic, we often picture a grand, beautiful vessel, the largest and most luxurious of its era. It was a symbol of human achievement and confidence, a floating palace that many people believed could not sink. This belief in its own strength made the ship famous even before it sailed. The world watched as this marvel of engineering was prepared, and the excitement for its first journey was felt on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. The Titanic represented the height of technology and luxury at the beginning of the 20th century, a testament to what mankind thought it could accomplish. The importance of the Titanic goes far beyond its size or its tragic end. The ship's story has become a powerful legend, a tale that has been told and retold for more than a century. It captures our imagination because it is a very human story. It involves great wealth and deep poverty, incredible bravery and terrible fear, all playing out on a single fateful night. The people on board came from all walks of life, each with their own hopes and plans for the future. The sudden and shocking disaster brought all of these different lives together in a moment of shared destiny. This is why the Titanic remains a subject of endless fascination, a historical event that feels as real and immediate to us today as it did to the people who lived through it. The tale of the Titanic is also a lesson. It reminds us that even the greatest human creations are vulnerable. In a time of great optimism and progress, the sinking of the Titanic was a harsh wake-up call. It showed that nature is powerful and unpredictable, and that we should never become too proud of our own abilities. The ship was called Unsinkable, a claim that was repeated in newspapers and conversations. This confidence made the actual sinking even more shocking. The tragedy forced people to look again at the rules and regulations for safety at sea, leading to changes that have saved countless lives in the years since. The Titanic's story is therefore not just a tragedy, but also a catalyst for progress. As we look back on this event from our vantage point on August 16th, 2025, the legend of the Titanic feels more potent than ever. It's been the subject of books, songs, and famous movies, each one introducing a new generation to the ship and its passengers. The story holds a mirror up to society at that time, showing its class structures, its ambitions, and its flaws. But it also speaks to timeless themes of love, loss, sacrifice, and survival. It is a story that connects with us on a deep, emotional level. The ship itself may lie at the bottom of the ocean, but its story continues to sail on, a permanent part of our collective memory and a powerful reminder of a night to remember. The idea for the Titanic was born from a fierce competition between rival shipping companies. In the early 1900s, the White Star Line wanted to dominate the profitable North Atlantic passenger route. Its main competitor, the Cunard Line, had recently launched two fast and popular ships, the Lusitania and the Mauretania. To compete, the chairman of the White Star Line, J. Bruce Ismay, and Lord Pirrie of the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Ireland, decided on a new strategy. They would not try to build the fastest ships. Instead, they would build the biggest and most luxurious ships the world had ever seen. They planned a trio of magnificent vessels, the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. These ships would offer passengers unparalleled comfort and style. The construction of the Titanic was a massive undertaking that began in 1909 at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. Thousands of workers were needed to build the enormous vessel. The ship's frame was made of giant steel ribs, and its hull was formed by riveting huge steel plates together. It was noisy, dangerous work, but the men who built her took immense pride in their creation. The ship slowly took shape, growing larger day by day, until it towered over the shipyard. It was designed to be a marvel of modern engineering, with 16 watertight compartments that were supposed to keep it afloat even if several of them flooded. This innovative design feature was the primary reason why many people, including the ship's own builders, believed it was virtually unsinkable. The sheer scale of the Titanic was difficult to comprehend. It was 882 feet and 9 inches long, which is almost the length of 3 football fields. It was as tall as an 11-story building from its keel to the top of its 4 iconic funnels. Inside, the ship was a floating city of luxury. The first-class areas were designed to look like the finest hotels in Europe, with a grand staircase topped by a glass dome, elegant dining rooms, a swimming pool, a gymnasium, and even a Turkish bath. Even the third-class accommodations, often called steerage, were better than those on many other ships of the time, offering private cabins and dining areas instead of large open dormitories. Every detail was carefully planned to make the Titanic the queen of the ocean. After nearly 3 years of construction, the Titanic was launched into the water on May 31st, 1911. This was just the launch of the hull. The work of fitting out the interior would take another 10 months. Finally, in early April 1912, the great ship was complete. It successfully completed its sea trials, a series of tests to make sure that all its equipment, from the engines to the steering, worked perfectly. With its powerful engines and its magnificent interiors, the Titanic was ready to welcome its first passengers. It was a symbol of a confident age, a testament to the skill of its builders and the ambition of its owners. The world eagerly awaited the start of its grand maiden voyage, unaware that this masterpiece of construction was sailing toward a tragic destiny. The Titanic's first and only voyage began on Wednesday, April 10th, 1912. Excitement filled the air at the port of Southampton, England. Crowds gathered to see the magnificent new ship as passengers began to arrive. People from all social classes were boarding wealthy industrialists and their families heading for the luxurious first-class suites. Professionals and tourists in the comfortable second class, and hundreds of immigrants in third class seeking a new life in America. Each person carried their own story and their own dreams onto the vessel. The ship's captain was Edward J. Smith, a highly experienced and respected commander who was planning to retire after this one last trip. The mood was one of optimism and celebration as the giant ship pulled away from the dock. From Southampton, the Titanic made 2 brief stops. Its first stop was later that day in Cherbourg, France, to pick up more passengers, including some of its most famous and wealthy travellers like Margaret Molly Brown and John Jacob Astor IV. The ship's tenders had to bring these passengers out to the Titanic, as it was too large to fit into the French harbour. After leaving France, the ship sailed overnight to its final port of call in Europe, Queenstown, now known as Cove, in Ireland. It arrived on the morning of April 11th. Here, it picked up its last group of passengers, mostly Irish emigrants full of hope for the future. As the Titanic finally steamed away from the Irish coast and headed into the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, its journey to New York City had truly begun. For the next few days, the voyage was smooth and pleasant, the weather was clear and the sea was calm. Passengers settled into the ship's routine, exploring its amazing facilities. First-class passengers enjoyed lavish meals in the grand dining saloon, exercised in the gymnasium, or relaxed on the spacious decks. Those in second class found their accommodations to be excellent, with their own library and smoking room. In third class, families gathered in the general room to talk, play music, and share their excitement about arriving in America. For everyone on board, the Titanic was living up to its promise. It was a comfortable, stable, and truly impressive ship, gliding effortlessly through the calm waters of the Atlantic. The dream was everything they had hoped it would be. The ship was making excellent time across the ocean. The powerful engines were working perfectly, and the ship was traveling at a high speed of around 22 knots. The first few days at sea were uneventful, a perfect start to what was supposed to be a historic crossing. The ship received several wireless messages from other vessels in the area, warning of icebergs ahead. These warnings were noted, but they did not seem to cause major concern among the senior officers. The belief in the ship's safety and the desire to make good time on its maiden voyage may have contributed to a sense of overconfidence. As the evening of Sunday, April 14th approached, the ship continued to sail at a fast pace into the cold, dark waters of the North Atlantic. As night fell on Sunday, April 14th, the sea was unusually calm and flat. The sky was clear and filled with stars, but there was no moon. This lack of moonlight, combined with the calm water, made it extremely difficult to spot icebergs. A calm sea meant there were no waves breaking against the base of an iceberg, which would normally create a line of white foam that lookouts could see from a distance. The temperature had dropped significantly, and the air was freezing cold. The ship was sailing into a known ice field, and the lookouts in the Crow's Nest, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, were straining their eyes, peering into the darkness ahead. They were doing their best, but they were working without a crucial piece of equipment, binoculars, which had been misplaced before the voyage began. Throughout the day, the Titanic's wireless operators had received multiple ice warnings from other ships. These messages reported large icebergs and vast fields of ice directly in the Titanic's path. While some of these warnings were passed to the bridge, not all of them were treated with the urgency they required. The wireless operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, were employed by the Marconi Company, not the White Star Line. They were busy sending and receiving personal messages for the wealthy first-class passengers, which was a profitable part of their job. One critical warning from a nearby ship, the Californian, was sent late that evening, but was not delivered to Captain Smith because the wireless operator on the Titanic was overwhelmed with other traffic. This combination of factors, the high speed, the dark and moonless night, the unusually calm sea, and the unheeded warnings, created a recipe for disaster. On the bridge, the officers were aware of the potential for ice, but they likely did not understand the true scale of the danger they were steaming towards. They maintained their high speed, following the common practice of the time. The belief was that any iceberg could be spotted in time to steer the ship around it. This confidence was a hallmark of the era, a deep faith in technology and the skill of experienced seamen. But on this particular night, the unique conditions made that belief a fatal miscalculation. The great ship was unknowingly charging into a trap set by nature. Aboard the ship, most of the passengers were unaware of any danger. The evening had been a pleasant one. The orchestra had played beautiful music, and the dining rooms had been filled with conversation and laughter. As the night grew later, many passengers went to their cabins to sleep. The decks became quiet, and the only sounds were the steady thrum of the engines and the gentle rush of water along the ship's hull. The ship felt safe and secure, a warm and brightly lit world moving through the cold, empty darkness of the ocean. No one could have imagined that in just a few short moments their world would be shattered by a sudden and violent encounter with a mountain of ice. At 11:40 p.m, the moment of impact arrived. In the Crow's Nest, lookout Frederick Fleet suddenly saw a large, dark shape directly in the ship's path. He immediately rang the warning bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge, shouting the chilling words, "Iceberg right ahead!" First Officer William Murdoch, who was in command on the bridge, acted instantly. He ordered the ship to be turned hard a starboard, a sharp turn to the left, and for the engines to be put into reverse. For a few agonizing seconds, the massive ship began to slowly turn, but it was too late. The Titanic was just too big and moving too fast to avoid the collision completely. The underwater part of the iceberg scraped along the starboard or right side of the ship's hull. The impact itself was not a loud crash for most people on board. Many passengers who were awake felt only a slight shudder or a grinding vibration, as if the ship had run over something small. Some thought an engine had stopped, while others did not notice anything at all and continued their conversations or card games. But below the waterline, the damage was severe. The iceberg had punched holes and buckled the steel plates along a roughly 300-foot section of the hull, breaching 5 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments. Water began pouring into the bow of the ship immediately. The ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, was on board for the Maiden voyage. After a quick inspection of the damage, he delivered the terrible news to me: the Titanic was doomed and it would sink in 2 hours or less. Faced with an unimaginable crisis, I knew I had to act. I ordered my wireless operators to begin sending out distress signals using the new SOS call. I also ordered the crew to uncover the lifeboats and begin waking the passengers. At first, there was little sense of panic. Many passengers did not believe the ship was in serious trouble. They came out onto the decks in their night clothes, feeling the cold night air and seeing the crew prepare the lifeboats. The ship's orchestra was asked to play cheerful music on the deck to help keep everyone calm. The process of loading the lifeboats was slow and disorganized. There was no plan or drill for evacuating all the passengers, and many crew members did not know how to properly lower the boats. A critical and fatal problem soon became clear. The Titanic did not have enough lifeboats for everyone on board. The ship was legally equipped with 20 lifeboats, which could hold about 1,178 people. However, there were over 2,200 passengers and crew on the ship. The regulations for lifeboats were based on the ship's weight, not the number of people it carried, and these rules were hopelessly out of date. Furthermore, in the initial confusion, many of the lifeboats were launched only half full. The crew followed the order of women and children first, but many women were reluctant to leave the seeming safety of the huge ship to get into a small boat being lowered into the dark, freezing ocean. The people on the Titanic came from every level of society. And their experiences on that final night were shaped by their class. In first class, passengers were awakened by stewards and calmly told to put on their life belts and go to the boat deck. Some of the wealthiest people in the world were on board, like John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in America, who helped his young wife into a lifeboat and then stepped back, knowing he would not be saved. Benjamin Guggenheim, another millionaire, famously changed back into his finest evening wear, stating he was prepared to go down like a gentleman. These stories of quiet dignity and sacrifice became part of the Titanic's enduring legend, showing grace under the most extreme pressure. In second class, the situation was also orderly at first, but with a growing sense of urgency. This group was made up of professionals, teachers, and middle-class families. They too were guided towards the boat deck, but they had to navigate more complex corridors to get there. The bandmaster, Wallace Hartley, and his fellow musicians were second-class passengers. They famously played their instruments on deck as the ship sank, their calming music providing a soundtrack to the tragedy. Their bravery has been remembered as one of the most heroic acts of the night. Their final melody was a symbol of courage and humanity in the face of certain death, an attempt to bring comfort to those who were terrified and had no hope of escape. For the passengers in third class or steerage, the situation was far more desperate and confusing. Their cabins were located in the lowest parts of the ship, at the bow and stern areas that flooded first. They were far from the boat deck, and many of the paths and stairways leading up were blocked by locked gates or crew members. While the gates were meant to separate the different classes as required by United States immigration laws, on that night they became deadly barriers. Many third-class passengers, a large number of whom did not speak English, struggled to understand what was happening and where they were supposed to go. Entire families from Ireland, Scandinavia and Eastern Europe perished, their dreams of a new life in America lost to the cold Atlantic. The crew of the Titanic displayed a wide range of behaviours, from incredible heroism to understandable confusion. The officers on the bridge, like Charles Lightoller, worked tirelessly to load the lifeboats and maintain order, strictly enforcing the women and children first rule. The engineers and firemen in the boiler rooms stayed at their posts until the very end, keeping the ship's lights and power on so the evacuation could continue. Their sacrifice allowed the wireless to keep sending distress calls and gave those on deck a chance to see what they were doing. These acts of duty and bravery stand in stark contrast to the chaos and the heartbreaking reality that there were simply not enough boats to save everyone. As the Titanic sank deeper into the ocean, the angle of the deck became steeper, making it harder for people to stand. The final lifeboats pulled away from the sinking ship, many of them with empty seats. The people left on board knew that their chances of survival were gone. The ship's lights flickered once and then went out, plunging the scene into terrifying darkness. Then, with a series of loud groans and crashes from deep within, the enormous vessel broke in two between the third and fourth funnels. The bow section sank first, pulling the stern high into the air. For a moment the stern stood almost vertical against the starry sky before it too slid beneath the waves at around 2:20 in the morning on April 15th, 1912. Once the ship was gone, the ocean was filled with the cries of more than 1,500 people struggling in the freezing water. The water temperature was about 28 degrees Fahrenheit or -2 degrees Celsius, far below freezing. In such extreme cold, a person could survive for only a few minutes. Those in the lifeboats could hear the terrible sounds from the darkness, but were too afraid to go back. They feared that the desperate swimmers would swarm their small boats and capsize them. Only one lifeboat, commanded by 5th Officer Harold Lowe, went back to look for survivors after gathering several boats together. By the time he returned, it was too late. He managed to pull only 4 people from the water alive. The cries slowly faded away into an eerie silence. The nearest ship, the SS Californian, was stopped in the ice field only about 10 to 20 miles away. Its crew saw the white rockets that the Titanic fired into the sky as a distress signal. However, the Californian's captain, Stanley Lord, and his officers did not understand that the rockets were a call for help. They thought they might be company signals between ships of the same line. The ship's only wireless operator had gone to bed just minutes before the Titanic started sending its SOS messages. The Californian did nothing, remaining stationary until morning. This failure to act would later become one of the most controversial parts of the Titanic story, a tragic what-if that haunted the memory of the disaster for decades. The rescue ship that did answer the call was the RMS Carpathia. It had received the Titanic's distress signal and immediately turned around, racing through the dangerous ice field at its top speed. The journey took nearly 4 hours. The Carpathia arrived at the scene around 4 in the morning, long after the Titanic had sunk. Its crew saw the green lights of the lifeboats scattered across the water. Over the next few hours, the Carpathia carefully picked up all the survivors from the 13 lifeboats it found. In total, only about 705 people were saved. More than 1,500 men, women and children had lost their lives in the disaster. As the sun rose, the survivors on the deck of the Carpathia looked out at the empty ocean, scattered with icebergs, where their magnificent ship had once been. When the Carpathia arrived in New York on April 18th with the Titanic survivors, the world was hungry for news. Huge crowds waited at the dock, desperate to learn who had lived and who had died. Newspapers were filled with dramatic headlines and personal stories of heroism and loss. The public was in shock. How could a ship that was called Unsinkable have sunk on its very first voyage? People demanded answers. In both the United States and Great Britain, official inquiries were launched to investigate the causes of the disaster. These investigations called hundreds of witnesses, including surviving crew members, passengers, and the captain of the Californian, to testify about what happened that night. The inquiries revealed a long list of mistakes and failures. They found that the ship was traveling too fast through a known ice field. They criticized the fact that the ice warnings had not been taken seriously enough. The investigation brought to light the shocking fact that there were not enough lifeboats for everyone on board, even though the ship had met the legal requirements of the time. The conduct of the SS Californian's captain was heavily criticized for not coming to the Titanic's aid. The findings made it clear that the disaster was not an accident caused by a single mistake, but the result of a combination of overconfidence, outdated regulations, and human error. The world learned a hard lesson about the dangers of pride. As a direct result of the Titanic disaster, shipping laws across the world were changed forever to make sea travel safer. One of the most important new rules was that all ships had to carry enough lifeboats for every single person on board, both passengers and crew. This simple rule has saved countless lives since 1912. Furthermore, the inquiries led to new regulations requiring that lifeboat drills be held on every voyage so that passengers and crew would know what to do in an emergency. Ship radios had to be manned 24 hours a day, ensuring that distress calls would never again go unheard. These changes were swift and significant, a direct response to the public outcry following the tragedy. In 1914, the International Ice Patrol was established. This organization, operated by the United States Coast Guard, was created to monitor the location of icebergs in the North Atlantic and warn ships of any danger. The Ice Patrol's mission is to make sure that a tragedy like the Titanic's never happens again. For over a century, it has successfully tracked icebergs, keeping the busy shipping lanes safe. The sinking of the Titanic was a terrible tragedy, but the lessons learned from it led to a new era of safety at sea. The 1,500 people who lost their lives did not die in vain. Their memory lives on in the improved safety standards that protect all who travel on the oceans today. More than a century after it sank, the story of the Titanic continues to captivate people all over the world. It is a story that has been passed down through generations, becoming a powerful myth of the modern age. One reason for its lasting appeal is the ship itself. The Titanic was the ultimate symbol of luxury and technological pride, a floating world that was destroyed in a single night. The dramatic contrast between its celebrated launch and its tragic end makes for a compelling narrative. The discovery of the ship's wreck at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean in 1985 brought the story back to life, allowing us to see the ghost of the great ship and connect with its history in a new and powerful way. The story also endures because it is filled with unforgettable human drama. It is a collection of thousands of individual stories of courage, cowardice, love and loss. We remember the band playing on as the ship went down, the wealthy men who sacrificed their lives, and the hopeful immigrants whose dreams were lost in the icy water. These personal tales make the enormous tragedy feel real and relatable. They allow us to imagine what it must have been like on that terrible night, and to ask ourselves what we might have done in the same situation. The Titanic story is not just about a shipwreck, it is about people, and their stories are timeless. Furthermore, the Titanic serves as a powerful cautionary tale. It is a story about the limits of technology and the dangers of human arrogance. In an age of rapid progress, people believed they had conquered nature, and the Titanic was the greatest expression of that belief. Its sinking was a humbling reminder that we are still vulnerable to the forces of the natural world. This lesson is just as relevant today, in our own age of incredible technological advancement, as it was in 1912. The Titanic reminds us to be humble, to be prepared, and to never assume that our creations are perfect or indestructible. It teaches us that progress must always be balanced with caution and respect for the world around us. Ultimately, the Titanic story is a permanent part of our culture. It has inspired countless books, documentaries, and one of the most successful films of all time. Each new telling introduces the Ship of Dreams to a new audience, ensuring that its memory will not fade. The story of the Titanic is more than just history. It is a legend that explores timeless themes of social class, heroism, fate, and the fragility of life. It is a story that makes us think about the past and reflect on our own lives. For all these reasons, the great ship continues to sail on in our collective imagination, its light never truly going out, a forever unsinkable legend.